Hello and welcome to another session of the Greenplum 7.6 roadmap and release updates for the management and monitoring utilities. Uh, Quick introduction. I'm the product manager for the Greenplum utilities and the GPCC component. So I'll go ahead and present like some of the new introductions that have been made with the Greenplum 7.6 release. All right. As we know, we have your Greenplum core architecture, which has your Greenplum data warehouse along with your Tanzu data lake offering, and then we have like a list of various components that are basically associated with the warehouse, like which includes data ingestion, querying, storage, replication, analytics. But then eventually you also need your Greenplum utilities for management and monitoring of your Greenplum cluster, right? So we did some enhancements to the current utilities on the 7.6 version, which can be useful for some of you out there who are planning to upgrade to the Greenplum 7.6 release. Right, so I'll go over some of the introductions and then we can cover them step by step as we move. We'll start with one of the bigger like features that we introduced in 7.6, that is your uh, segment recovery. So we already have something called as the GP service task framework that is available in the Greenplum 7.5 release and up. So we have now a way to introduce the automatic segment recovery using the GP service task framework, right? So previously, as we know, right, like whenever a segment went down for some reason, or a node was taken out, or reintroduced into the cluster, recovering the segments was always a manual process, right? Like you would run the GP recover seg utility to recover the segments, and then based on the outcome, you would either ensure that all the segments are up and running, or if some segment failed for some reason, you would evaluate the root cause for it and then attempt another round of recovery. Right. So this obviously was like a manual process, needed human intervention. And then like it was some form of a operational overhead, especially for DBAs, to constantly like monitor and like run the recovery as needed, right? Like so in GP 7.6, we now have a way to automate the Greenplum segment recovery using the GP service task framework, right? Like so, GP service task is basically a command that will uh, enable you to schedule a particular job, right? At regular intervals, and then like you can either pause or resume the job based on your requirement, right? Like so, what you can do is use a configuration file to schedule the auto recovery. So in this configuration file, you see the name of the job that you need to schedule, and then basically run the following command when the job is triggered, which means that this command is going to be an incremental recovery attempt on the segments that may be down at that stage, right? And then you can like modify this command to suit your needs, right? Like you can remove some of these options like batches, etc. And then what this job will do is at that point of time it will check to see if there are any segments down, and if it finds that there is a segment, maybe a mirror or a primary that has got marked down previously, it will go ahead and attempt incremental recovery on that particular segment. Now, you can also schedule it at particular point of time. So this particular scheduling, uh, like template is mimicking your cron scheduling template, right? Like, so this is your minutes, this is your hour, date, month, etc., right? Like, so all of this can be configured within the configuration file, right? And then you can basically use it to schedule your auto recovery periodically. We also have some other like features within the configuration file, which has been documented in the GP service task section in Greenplum documentation, which basically tells you, whether you want to log the command errors to the log file. The log file is basically stored in your /var/log/greenplum-7 directory, right? Like, so the GP service log files are all stored there. So in this setting basically tells you whether you want to log the error or if you want to also log the output of each run of the auto recovery, right? Like, so all this can be configured directly using the task framework. All right, so the GP service task framework comes automatically enabled in 7.6. So if you type GP service task --help, it gives you all the options with which you can schedule your particular auto recovery feature. My take is like you can schedule the auto recovery at maybe a particular time of the day using this particular setting, like, or you may probably want to set it at regular intervals, right? Like maybe an hourly basis to see if there are segments which are down. And then if it does find segments down, the auto recovery will basically trigger this command. Now, one question might be like, what happens if there are no segments down, right? Like, what does it do? So when there are no segments marked down, the GP recover seg command just gracefully exits, stating that there are no segments to be recovered. Right, so the output of that command like gets logged into your GP service hub log file, like whenever this output is set to true. Right, so if it doesn't find any segments down, like it will just log the output and gracefully exit out. Another question might be like, what happens if a recovery is already running when the task is scheduled? And that's when GP recover seg will automatically detect that there is a concurrent GP recover seg running at that point of time, right? So the output will basically gracefully exit, stating that GP recover seg is already running, we cannot run it again, and it will attempt this the next time the auto recovery is scheduled. Right, so all of this has been taken care of, like using the task framework and the GP recover seg command. So feel free to like use it and test it out based on your current Greenplum 7.6 cluster. All right, another important feature or enhancement, I should say, has come into the Greenplum 7.6 version is speeding up your differential recovery of segments. Right, so remember, like we have three modes of recovery currently available with Greenplum 7 and 7.6 especially. Prior versions as well. But then we recommend using differential recovery starting 7.6 because of this particular enhancement, right? So you basically have three modes of recovery. One is incremental, which just performs delta changes. The next is full recovery, which is basically a lift and shift of the entire segment data directory. And you have an intermediate a mode called as the differential recovery, which basically only moves the files that have changed between your primary and the mirror. Right, so it is like a faster way of performing recovery in case incremental recovery has failed for some reason. So in Greenplum 7.6, we have introduced, by the way, differential recovery uses rsync internally to sync the delta changes between your files. Right, so in 7.6, we have introduced a way to parallelize the rsync processes, right? Like, so in prior versions before 7.6, there was a single rsync thread that was doing the sync changes. And usually this would introduce some performance hit, like especially if you are doing delta changes sync between extremely large segment data directories, right? Sorry. So, like as I said, like in earlier versions, there was a single threaded rsync process that was doing the sync, and this it might introduce some performance hit. Starting 7.6, you can now like introduce multiple rsync processes for each segment, right? So we have now a flag called parallel rsync degree, which basically allows you to specify the number of rsync processes that can be run in parallel. This enables the differential recovery to take your segment data directory and uh, uh, parallelize all the like checksumming, the RSIC changes, etc. Like all of this can be done now in parallel, which basically will speed up the differential recovery. We've done some testing on like medium to large clusters internally and to see how it performs, and we've seen uh, almost 70 to 80% increase in performance as compared to prior differential recovery versions, right? So if you want to test differential recovery on 7.6, I highly recommend using the parallel rsync degree flag to increase the number of rsync processes that can work for each segment, right? So just note the parallel rsync degree flag can only be used in conjunction with the differential recovery. It does not work with any of the other like recovery modes. Okay, as I mentioned, like after some of the improvements that we made with the differential recovery parallelism, like we saw almost 80 to 90% approximately in that range in terms of how much data was to be synced, the size of your segment data directory, and whether the mirror was empty or available. Like and based on that, like we saw close to like 80, like the max performance like improvement we saw was around 88% with 1.5 terabyte of data size, right? So like, and this is with respect to the parallel rsync degree switch to approximately 16 to 64 in terms of number. So based on your system requirements, right? Like how many max startups that you can have per segment node, you can try using 8, 16, 20 as a value for the parallel rsync degree process, right? Like so you can set it to maybe 8 or 16, see how much gain you can get on the performance. And if you have enough resources, you can maybe bump it to a higher version to see if that speeds up the differential even more. So all of this has been documented in your GP recover seg manual as well as the man command. So feel free to like review it as needed. As I mentioned, the flag can only be used in conjunction with the differential recovery flag. And this way you can automate and set it to a particular value, especially if you're for example, if you want to test it with a lower value and then incrementally bump it up so that you can see if you're gaining any performance with segment recovery, especially if incremental recovery has failed. All right, we now move on to Greenplum Command Center. And in some of the prior releases for GPCC 7.4 and 7.5, we did some modifications to the user interface for GPCC. So we moved from a legacy UI model to Clarity. So it basically provides you a better, like fresh look in terms of the UI and UI handling. You will see that there are some like subtle changes to how the UI looks now that 7.4 onwards. We have moved the UI interface to Clarity. You get a dark mode, so in case like you want to you are in an office setting which is a little bit on the darker side, you want to switch to a dark mode, you can now switch GPCC to a dark mode starting 7.4, right? So that is currently available in the latest release as well. We also now have the ability to deploy GPCC web server outside of the Greenplum coordinator. This basically enables you to maybe run GPCC on a node which maybe is not included in your Greenplum cluster, and you want to keep GPCC web server running somewhere outside so that it does not interfere with resources on the Greenplum coordinator. Right, so this feature is now available starting GPCC 7.5, and then you can basically deploy GPCC outside and then provide credentials to the Greenplum coordinator when setting it to be deployed outside of the Greenplum cluster. You also now have a GPCC uninstall like mode with the GPCC-util utility, which will help you uninstall Greenplum Command Center in case there's any need to do that on a particular Greenplum node. We have also in the next GPCC release 7.6, we have a plan to introduce single sign-on support with GPCC, which basically means that if you have an identity provider within your organization, right, such as Okta or Keycloak or Auth0, you can now deploy GPCC as a web server application where it will give you the ability to perform single sign-on using your IDP credentials, right? So, for example, if your organization is using Okta, you can now like set up GPCC to use Okta as the IDP provider. So Okta like will show GPCC as one of the tiles internally where you can click on the tile and it will automatically log in to your GPCC using your Okta credentials. Now, internally, there is a need to map your credentials to a particular GPCC role, like it can be the operator or an admin role or a general user, right? Like, so this way, depending on the permissions that you have, you will be able to kind of just plainly log in to GPCC using your Okta or your IDP credentials. Now, this feature will be coming out in the GPCC 7.6 release. And this way, if you have an organizational requirement to get GPCC onboarded onto your IDP credentials, such as maybe Keycloak or Okta, you can start doing that via the 7.6 version. All right, so more details would be provided in the GPCC documentation on how to set up the YDC credentials, etc. And then you can work with your IDP team internally to have that enabled via the IDP provider. So you will see a tile or a way to authenticate GPCC directly with your single sign-on login. All right, I did mention previously, so I'll reiterate like in the latest Greenplum 7.5 and 7.6 versions, we now have a GP service task framework, which means you now have a way to natively schedule auto recovery or any other forms of maintenance tasks, for example, right? Like if you want to run vacuum on a particular set of tables or the database like at a particular point of time, you can now do that using the GP service task framework. Right, so you now have a nice configuration file that you can set up with the task framework and pass that file to the GP service task command, and that file will basically have all the particular jobs that you can like list and provide. via the task framework. More on this available on the GP service task documentation. And you obviously can also include pre-hooks and post-hooks for each task, right? Like so for before scheduling incremental auto recovery, you want to check if a backup is running, you can create a pre-hook within the config file to check if GB backup is running. And post-hook, maybe you can set up a email notification after every successful run of auto recovery. Right, so the task framework is now available, like starting GP Service 7.5. Documentation for it is also available in the Greenplum docs, and you can basically set it up directly, like with 7.5 and onward versions, to use the task framework. Another important update to one of the utilities is GP State. So GP State in prior versions, like whenever you had your coordinator like unavailable for some reason, right? Like if the postmaster process on your coordinator was not available or not reachable, or if it was shut down for some reason, GP State would not provide us any meaningful information on the state of the segments on the cluster, right? Like it would say that the postmaster is not running and it could no longer get the current health of the segments. So starting 7.6, we now introduced a behavior where GP state, if it detects that the current postmaster on your coordinator is down, it gets the current state of the segments from a saved flat file on disk, right? Like so, if you want to know the last known health of your segments before the postmaster and the coordinator went down, you can still run GP state -e and it will tell you exactly what segments were down and which segments were under recovery, etc., based on the current state. This may be an important feature, especially if you are troubleshooting like some information or a postmaster shutdown and you want to like know the state of your cluster, especially with the Tanzu support team, you can use this feature starting 7.6. All right, so just to recap all the latest changes in 7.6, firstly, please do start using the GP service task framework to schedule any like jobs, maintenance activities, or if you want to schedule auto recovery of your segments, you can start using the task framework moving on. We also now have a way to parallelize the differential rsync processes that are running for each segment, so that if you want to speed up differential recovery for the segment, you can increase the rsync parallelism degree, right? So that is a nice feature to have. And lastly, like we have improvements within GPCC, especially the version that's coming up, where you can enable single sign-on with GPCC with your identity provider within your organization. And we also have improvements in the GP State utility, where if your coordinator postmaster is down for some reason, the GP State utility will provide the last known state of the segments on the cluster, even though the postmaster is not responsive. All right, so thank you for taking time to go through the recording. And if you have any questions or if you need any other information, feel free to reach out via the Tanzu support channel to get more information on these features. Thank you very much.